Hi guys, welcome to our first episode in Voices of Jerba podcast. It's kind of a new concept I'm going to work on, which is a little bit different from what I used to do in Speak Up podcast, the other podcast that I had. Today I have a guest with me, which is not actually a guest. She is my sponsor for this podcast. Her name is Julia. She's gonna talk more about herself, and we're going to learn new things today in English. So I won't be talking much. I would say welcome everybody, and thank you for being here, and thank you for listening. I want to start by letting Julia introduce herself, and then we're going to tackle a little bit of English learning. So, hi, Julia.
Hi, Noor. Thanks for having me.
Sure.
I'm excited about this podcast, and
So am I.
thanks for the great idea. Noor has really worked hard to make this happen, so we're really thankful for her. So, I'm Julia. I'm 28, almost 29 years old. I live here in Jerba, but I'm from America. So a really small town in the state of Alabama, place that no one really knows. But my reference point is always Florida. I always tell people that Alabama is close to Florida because most people know, like Miami or something like that. So, but it's a beautiful place, and I lived there for most of my life until moving here. I moved here in 2020, which was a crazy time because COVID and everything. But I was a part of a language program at the time, and I completed that, and I decided to stay in Tunisia and opened an English consulting business, which is where we are now. And it's been really fun and a really great way, one, to work, but also to just make relationships and connections with people. And I love my job. I love what I do. So I just got married in February. My husband and I, we live here now. He was born in Tunis, but so he's lived all of his life in Tunisia. He is his parents are not from Tunisia. So we love Tunisia. We have a lot of
friends, I guess.
We have a lot of friends, and we have a lot of reasons to thank Tunisia for giving us each other and for our friends and things. So
especially work, I guess. So we're gonna dedicate another episode to talk about Dream English Jerba, because it needs a whole episode where the whole staff talk about themselves and about what they do, so that you guys get to meet them. And if you feel like you need help, I don't know, what kind of help, with grammar, vocabulary, you have an IELTS exam or whatsoever, you can just consult them, call them, and you can fix a rendezvous together, I guess. But let's keep that for another episode where we're going actually to talk about it more. But for now, I want to say one more time, welcome and congrats. I wanted to keep you talking and I didn't want to interrupt you. But if you don't know, guys, we're already friends, so it's not like the first time we meet. It's not the first time that we meet, and we've been friends for, I don't know, for how long, 3-4 years?
Yeah, I think so.
So we know each other, and that's why I didn't want to interrupt her whatsoever. So to not make it longer than this, I want to let Julia talk about her topic today. So, tell me, what have you chosen for our topic?
So when you approached me about this note, I was thinking, what are the things that Tunisians really need help with? Oftentimes, from my experience, what are the things that the clients that we have come in and have questions about, or maybe are confused about? And I think some of the hardest things in the English language are what we call phrasal verbs. So I'll explain a little bit about what a phrasal verb is. So it's taking a verb, so a simple verb like go or come or get. So you take one of those words and you add a preposition to it. And when you add the preposition to that verb, it completely changes the meaning of the verb itself. So, for example, everyone knows what go means. But if I add the preposition go after, for example, it changes the meaning. It means to try to achieve a goal, for example. Another example could be the verb pick. Okay, so if I pick something that has a meaning, but if I add the word pick up, it changes the meaning. So those are what we call phrasal verbs. There's a lot of them in the English language. And I think the hardest part about it is oftentimes you just have to memorize them, and it comes with practice.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
Now, one thing that you can know, though, is that some phrasal verbs, you can separate them, and some phrasal verbs, you cannot separate them. Okay, so for example, the phrasal verb pick up that I mentioned before, you can separate those two words with a noun in the middle. So for example, if I said, I need to pick up the food for lunch, okay, maybe I'm going to eat lunch out, and I'm going to order it, I'm going to take it with me to my house. I can say I'm going to pick up the food, or I can say I'm going to pick the food up. Okay, so you can say it either way.
Yeah.
So you can separate. So some of them you can do it that way. Others you can't. So for example, the phrasal verb to come across. If you come across something, it means that you discover it. So for example, if I said, I came across an article yesterday that talked about the US election. Okay, I couldn't say I came an article across. Okay, you can't separate the two words with a noun. Yeah. So phrasal verbs are, like I said, probably one of the most difficult things, especially for early learners who don't have too much exposure to English yet. But again, if you have questions or you want to learn more about phrasal verbs, there's lots of resources online, and also you can come and
check it out
take sessions with us. Yeah,
yes.
Exactly.
I actually totally recommend coming, guys, for you who are in Jerba, especially where they are situated in Midun. But for whoever is in Tunis, for example, or whatsoever, you can follow their Instagram page and text them. Probably they can try to make exception for online learning, or maybe if you're coming for a vacation or whatsoever, you can also come by and have your sessions face to face. Or Julia is here. Later on, you're going to also meet Chase and Khalil. They will be also talking about this, and they can also help you with your English learning. So it's not a problem to have a consulting session with them.
Mm-hmm.
Just please contact them, and you're gonna see everything and learn everything, whether online or face to face. Okay, so about phrasal verbs. For example, let's say a person doesn't read enough, doesn't listen enough to English. They're not too exposed to this language, and as you have said, it's really common to make these kind of issues and mistakes to not know the meaning, the right meaning, or maybe when writing you don't differentiate between these two things, these two meanings. I mean, do you have any advice that you can say to these people? So apart from learning online, of course,
right.
You can check how do I differentiate between this and that. I want to rate this and that. With ChatGPT now, also they get to answer you.
Right.
But no, let's say about someone really wants to learn English in the right way, and they, as a teacher and as a native speaker, what would you give them in advice to boost their level of English?
I think the most practice you can get, the more practice you can get, the better. So because a lot of the things that we learn in theory, we really need to practice them for them to become memorized and solidified in our brains. So thankfully here in Tunisia there are actually a pretty good bit of people who speak English well,
especially I guess the young generation now, more than the old one.
Sure. Exactly. Yeah. So if you have friends that speak English, maybe you make an agreement with each other, we're only going to speak English when we meet, today or something like that. Get exposure with even just simple things of changing your phone to English, apart from
the
French, settings.
Even video games, I guess.
Yeah.
If you are addicted to video games or you love video games, I guess that would be better to try to get out of your comfort zone and write in the chat with other people, or maybe there are live streams. You can also talk to these people and not be embarrassed to make mistakes or something. And I guess it depends on how much you listen. Because we get to memorize what we listen to, and I myself have learned a lot because I have memorized people talking, whether during listening to music, maybe a music video or a movie, or even talking to native speakers or my friends who are very good when talking English. So I guess that's a good thing for people to do.
Yeah, and I think like we have a lot of clients who come here and they really want to improve their communication skills, and I think that's very important. But what I always try to encourage people with is understanding someone and listening to someone is half communication. That's half the battle, right? So if you can understand, if your understanding is better than your speaking, that's okay.
I guess that's a really good point to start with.
Yes.
At least we're sure you can understand what the other people is talking.
Yeah.
Now the other part where you are answering the other person and they have to understand you.
And I actually think that listening is a great way to learn language. Like just what you were saying, to copy people, to mimic people, to understand the context of words and what they mean. That's actually really important. I think that's a more effective way of learning a language than just reading a book, for example.
True.
Now, of course, everybody has their own individual learning styles, but I think understanding, especially when you're talking with someone, listening and understanding is half of the conversation, is half of communication, right? You need to be able to understand someone and listen to someone to be able to respond to them. So I always try to encourage people, like I know you probably feel frustrated maybe that your speaking's not as good as your listening, but be encouraged when you can listen and understand, because that's half of the battle. I think other than that, there are loads of applications out there that will put you in touch with other language speakers. I'm trying to remember the names of them. Maybe I could send them to you and we could
we can put them probably on Instagram and in the description box of Spotify and YouTube. We can give you like the links where you can just access to them easily, I guess.
Yeah. And then also, if you live here in Jerba, or even outside of Jerba, we have conversation groups here at our business. And the whole goal is to give you a chance to practice speaking. So we as the consultants, we don't really interact that much. We don't speak. We try to speak as little as possible, just to allow the people who are in the group to be able to have conversations with each other and to practice speaking as much as possible.
Okay, and when they do a mistake, for example, do you guys get to stop them and tell them that this is not how we say this, or that this is the right way to do it, or say it or write it or whatsoever?
Yeah, so definitely we correct. We always, at the end of every session, we do like maybe 10 minutes of error correction where we're just saying, okay, this is the sentence I heard you say, what should you have said anyways, or instead of that, and what's the correct way of saying that. And then we'll also give corrections if maybe they don't know the right way to say that. We'll give them the right word to say as well. Yeah, so there is instruction for sure, like in the conversation groups we do teach things, but really the whole goal of it is practice.
Okay, Julia, tell us more about common mistakes Tunisians do, especially Tunisians. Here in this podcast, I would really focus on Tunisians because we're Tunisians and we're situated in Jerba, so that's for sure what I am focused on, and what I'm interested to know is the mistakes that most people do, especially your clients here, and how can they fix these kind of issues that they are facing.
So the ones I'll talk about now are mostly just the verbs and the adjectives, so just specific vocabulary words that often are confused. There are other mistakes that are common, but I'll just focus on these for now. One that I noticed that a lot of people often make here in Tunisia is, because you have the verb in Derja, you have the verb yugat. And yugat can mean like to stay, or it can mean to sit.
Yes.
So sometimes people confuse those two words in English because it's not the same thing. To stay means like to sit in a place and to not move. And to sit just means in general to like sit in a chair or sit. So that's a little bit confusing for some people when there's not a direct translation sometimes from stay and sit and then yugat. So that's one. So for example, if I said, like in Derja, maybe I would say to you, or something. But in in English, we wouldn't say sit nor I guess we could, but it would be more correct to say stay here nor I'll go and get something and I'll bring it back to you.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So the difference between the two.
I guess that's an issue for people who think Arab like in an Arab way and want to translate that into English, or people who are French. They have that French vocabulary and that French way of doing things, and then they want to translate it to English. Meanwhile, when you talk English, you have to think English. You cannot like think otherwise.
Right, and that goes back to what we were saying before, why listening is so important, because and I know this from personal experience, like there aren't always direct translations for things, and you just sound really unnatural sometimes if you try to do that. So
exactly.
Yeah, so that's one of them. Another one that's really common is the because of the French background, like you were saying, like lots of people speak French here. The word sensible in French, we do have that word in English. We say sensible, but it doesn't mean the same thing. It has a different meaning. So sensible in French actually means like someone who maybe they wear their heart on their sleeve. We say like they have a lot of emotions and feelings. That is actually a different word in English. We say sensitive, someone who is sensitive. So sensible or sensible in English means someone who is responsible, who has, we could say, like a good head on their shoulders. They make good decisions. Someone who is sensible. We could say maybe they're wise. It's like another way to say wise. So that's a big mistake I hear a lot as well. So sensible in English means wise, responsible, and then sensitive is Emotional, yeah. And then the last one I think that I hear a lot is the difference between job and work. So these are really similar words, and they are related to the same like domain, we could say. But job is a more specific word. So when we say the word job, like for example,
what's your job?
What's your job? Like my job is I'm an English consultant, right? So it's my specific position.
My task.
Yes. Whereas work is more like the activities that you do at your job. Okay, so I have work to do today. I have, 5 tasks to do today, or 5 different responsibilities to do today. That's my work. Whereas job is more like your specific
It's like
position.
the title.
Yeah. Job is your position, your title. Yeah. So for example, if I said my mom has a job, she's a nurse, I would say my mom has a job. I wouldn't say my mom has a work. Yeah. So those are the big, the words that are often confused, I find, in my experience. Another mistake that I hear sometimes is the difference between say and tell. So these verbs mean pretty much the same thing, but the way that we say them is different. So for example, say, I could say, for example, Noor said that tomorrow it will rain. Now, I can say Noor said that tomorrow it will rain, or I could say Noor said to me that tomorrow it will rain. Both of those are correct. You don't have to include who she said it to. But with tell, the verb tell, you do have to include who she said it to. So, for example, I could not say Noor told that tomorrow it will rain. I have to say Noor told me. Noor told me that tomorrow it will rain. So those are the main differences in those verbs. And then lastly, the verbs listen and hear. Again, these are related to one another. They're all surrounding the idea of sound. But if you listen to something, it's intentional. Okay, you're listening to music. You're listening to a friend who's talking to you. You're focused. You're intentionally listening to it. If you hear something, it's not intentional. You do it maybe passively. Okay, so for example, we're sitting here talking, and I heard a car outside. Okay, I wasn't listening for it. I wasn't intentionally trying to focus on it. I just all of a sudden heard it. Spontaneously. So those are the difference in those. So those are some of the words and the words and the verbs and adjectives that I feel like people make mistakes on here sometimes.
Thank you so much, Julia, for being here today. Thank you for giving us these little tips and tricks to know more how to differentiate between these verbs. and at the same time how you get to improve your level of English. Don't worry guys, we're gonna have like more episodes together. This is not like the last one for sure. I hope you gained a new information today, or you have known something that you didn't know before. If you have also any suggestions or any questions concerning English and stuff you want to know, how to do things, or maybe suggestions of books or whatsoever, do not forget that we have Instagram, TikTok, and we have YouTube, so you can contact us wherever, whether you leave a comment or a message or whatsoever, we can answer you. Thank you again, Julia, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
See you soon.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you guys for listening.